Guys, it's time to crack one open because it's grand final week. We finally made it. But nevertheless, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to be breaking down the 3 key factors that I think Brisbane are going to need to have if they want to win the grand final. Now, they're playing against Geelong, who is arguably the best team of the last 30 years, potentially. Brisbane are in their 3rd grand final in a row this year. They could be going for a three-peat had it not been for a Jordan De Goey and steel side bottom late goal in that 23 grand final. They might win a flag next year. They've got Oscar Allen coming. They've got Sam Draper coming. They've got another top 10 academy pick coming. They might go for another flag next year. This is getting ridiculous. But enough of that jibber jabber. Let's just get straight into the first key, in my opinion, for Brisbane winning this game. And that key is Brisbane getting their ball movement from the back half of the ground in order. When they're playing their best, they're doing things like this. So their ability to control the tempo and just weave around teams is just beautiful. But it all starts with players like Dane Zorko. So let's look at the work of Dane Zorko in this situation. So he's called to play on. So he's forced into a quick ball, quick play movement. But look at what he does when he is forced to play on. This kick right here is what changes the game. This is the kick that opens up everything for Brisbane. But it is also one of the most risky kicks in the league, because look at how close this is to getting intercepted by the Gold Coast midfielders. Bang. We are an inch away from this getting intercepted, but this is the ball movement that gets Brisbane going. So as soon as he gets that opening kick, it forces all of the Gold Coast midfielders, all of the Gold Coast defenders on the back foot, and it allows so much space, so many opportunities, so many openings for the Brisbane ball movement game from the back half to get going. So Dane Zorko is going to get this football back, and this is where Brisbane are most dangerous. When they can get this link-up run between their back half and their forward half, they get really quality inside 50 entries, and suddenly all of their forwards are in the most advantageous situations, and they just kick goals. So we're going to see a very similar thing here. They take the outside option always. They try and shift all of the Gold Coast defenders or all of the opposition defenders to one side of the ground. And as soon as they take that side, as soon as they pick a side, this is when they start to get their ball movement going, because they will shift all of the opposition defenders and then just cut straight through the middle of the ground and just trust their contest. They just trust their contest through the middle of the ground. But this is the Brisbane ball movement that is so dangerous for not only themselves, because they often do turn it over, but so dangerous for their opposition, because as soon as they can get the ball going through the middle of the ground from their back half, this is when they just outnumber completely in their forward half. This is when all of their forwards start to look their most dangerous, because as we know, they're not necessarily a massive contested marking team. Obviously, Ty Gallop had a little bit of a coming out party against Collingwood, and Logan Morris has shown flashes of being a contested marking beast. But if we're talking about for the majority of the season, if we're talking about on an average game basis, Ty Gallop and Logan Morris aren't taking 5, 6, 7 contested marks. The way that they are so dangerous, the way that they are at their most dangerous, is when they can get quick ball movement going. And all of that quick ball movement comes from their back half. And that is what allows all of their forwards so much space, so many opportunities in one-on-one situations. And as we know, if the Brisbane forwards can get one-on-one situations inside their forward 50 with players like Rayner and Bailey and Morris and apparently Ty Gallop now after his game against Collingwood, that is when they're going to be able to score. And here we've got the switch from Zach Bailey to Dane Zorko. And Dane Zorko is the one that is the catalyst for a lot of this risky ball movement, but really good ball movement through the middle of the ground. So we'll see him looking to the left, and as soon as he looks off these defenders here, that is what creates a massive gaping hole. So Matt Rowley is suddenly going across, Jared Witts is suddenly going across, Ben Long is suddenly going across to that side of the ground, and that just comes from Zorko looking that way. But all he's trying to do here is open up space through the middle of the ground. So as soon as he gets all of these Gold Coast defenders and midfielders to go to one side, to commit to going to one side, bang, the straight cut straight through the middle of the ground. And this is the ball movement. Now, it is extremely risky, as we see. Tuke Miller almost gets a hand on that, and then and then the ball is in live play again. But as soon as they can get this ball movement through the middle of the ground and start attacking the opposition and pulling all of the opposition defenders out of their set defensive positions, look at the amount of space that their forwards get. And we've seen them do it against Geelong. So again, we're looking at the exact same formula, the switching of the football to move the Geelong structure, to move the Geelong defenders out of their defensive structure. But as soon as they get this handball game going through the middle of the ground, that is when they open up this Geelong defence. And this is what they're going to need to do more of. So as soon as they get this forward handball, look at all of the Geelong defenders who are now stuck in no man's land. And as soon as they can get this going against any team, but specifically against Geelong, this is when they look their most dangerous. This is when all of their forwards have time and space and ability to win genuine one-on-ones inside their forward 50, because they get so much space, they get so many opportunities where they are in good positions relative to their direct opponents. Because when we look at Geelong, one of their biggest strengths is their forward half turnover game, their forward half press. So if Brisbane can get their back half ball movement game going and escape the Geelong web, that is when they are going to be at their most dangerous. They've got to force all of the Geelong defenders and all of the Geelong midfielders and all of the Geelong forwards out of their structure, out of their system, and force them to essentially be defending everything and nothing at the same time. So in this clip that we saw, a lot of the Geelong defenders are guarding space. They're guarding everything, but they're guarding nothing because of how well the Brisbane ball movement game was moving in that specific play. And now we get to the second key. And the second key is they have to get their stars involved in the game. Without Brisbane stars, they sort of fall down a little bit, because as we saw in that first key, a lot of their ball movement game relies on some genuine individual brilliance, whether it's Cam Rayner taking a massive mark in the middle of the ground in a 1v3 or breaking tackles left and right, whether it's Dane Zorko's ability to pinpoint a kick just by the barest of margins. A lot of their game is built on how good their players are, and they just have to get their stars involved, which they weren't able to do the last time they played against Geelong. Obviously, Mark O'Connor had a really strong, tight role on Cam Rayner. Obviously, Oisin Mullen had a really strong, tight role on Hugh McCluggage, but these are the players that Brisbane have to get going. And so, because when we look at players like Cam Rayner here, when he has the license and he has the ability to sort of roam around and do what he wants, this is the sort of stuff that he can do. So this is in the Collingwood versus Brisbane game, and right now in this situation, Cam Rayner is playing as a half forward. So his direct opponent is Isaac Quaynor, but he pushes himself up to this forward half stoppage, and he's by himself. And this is when Brisbane are at their most dangerous, because if he can roll up to stoppage by himself and he can get himself involved in the game, not only is he a threat around stoppage, where if the ball spills out, he's got immense amount of space on the outside, on the boundary side of this contest here, but when Brisbane are able to turn this football over right now, and as soon as Dane Zorko gets it, again, we're talking about individual brilliance, getting your stars involved in the game. When Cam Rayner is able to get himself involved in the game, by this point of the game, he hadn't had a kick. He had like 3 handballs, no kicks. But his ability to push himself up to stoppage and then run back with the flight of this football, getting lost in the transition of the game, where Isaac Quaynor has completely lost where he is, has lost touch and feel. That is when and how you get your star players involved. And from here on, he started to take over the game. But then this is what Geelong were able to do. So Mark O'Connor actually went up with Cam Rayner to every single stoppage, and that just meant not only did he have no space, because look at this, completely no space around stoppage, completely no ability to get himself involved in the game. So not only were Geelong able to take away one of Brisbane's best stoppage players, they were also able to take away Cam Rayner's incredible ability to get lost in transition. And that is where he gets a lot of his football. That is how he gets himself into the game. So Brisbane need to find a way, how can we get Cam Rayner involved in this game? How can we get Hugh McCluggage involved in this game? How can we get Zach Bailey involved in the game? And for Zach Bailey's case, a lot of that over the last couple of weeks with no Lachie Neale have been Brisbane just playing him as a genuine full-time mid. They've been saying, we need to get the ball in our best players' hands, essentially. We need to get our superstars involved in games more often. So instead of being stuck at high half forward, where you can get sort of taken out of the game, where you can sort of get lost in the ball movement game, where you can be too close to the contest or too far away from the contest, where the ball's being kicked over your head, just get your best players around the football. And that's what they did with Zach Bailey. And that's when, if you give him the freedom, if you give him the license, that's when he's going to be able to do things like this, where he's just going to run completely out the front of stoppage. He's going to get 1-2s, he's going to get handball receives, and this is when they're going to be at their most dangerous. So if Brisbane can continue to get their players involved in the game like this, like they did with Zach Bailey over the last couple of weeks, this is when they're going to be good, because they rely on their superstars, they rely on their star players being so good, being so up and about, getting themselves involved in the game, because it is just because a lot of their game is not necessarily built on structure and system. They obviously do have a really good defensive structure and a really good defensive system, but a lot of their offensive ball movement is reliant on their best players playing like genuine superstars. As I said, it relies on Dane Zorko biting off kicks that a lot of other players don't. It relies on Cam Rayner winning one-on-ones and breaking tackles. It relies on Zach Bailey pushing all the way up the ground and pushing all the way back and getting lost in transition. It relies on Hugh McCluggage breaking out a stoppage and outworking his opponent. So when we speak about these players, and Geelong's going to have a plan for all of them, like they did the last time they played. Hugh McCluggage realistically had rarely been tagged this year. He gets a really hard tag from Mullen and is completely taken out of the game. Now, Craig McRae said before the prelim final that Steele Sidebottom would go to Hugh McCluggage. And what did Hugh McCluggage do? Just completely outworked him. In the first quarter, had 8-9 touches, had a real big impact on the game, and it forced Collingwood to actually remove that tag. So can Hugh McCluggage do that this week? Can he go head-to-head with Mullen or whoever they're going to send to him and say, I'm just going to outwork you. I'm going to force you to change this matchup. Can Cam Rayner do the same thing? Can Zach Bailey do the same thing? Can these superstar players get themselves involved in the game? Because that is the second key to Brisbane winning this premiership. And then the third and final key is, can they stop ball movement? Can they funnel the football? Can they force slow tempo? Can they funnel the football towards Harris Andrews and their other intercept markers? If they can do this, if they can stop ball movement, that is how they get the rest of their game going. Because we'll see right here, as soon as Brisbane are able to number off and not allow Collingwood to go through the middle of the ground. So we just see a bracketing here of Nick Dacos. We see a bracketing here of Steele Sidebottom. We see a bracketing of all of the Collingwood players. So when Harry Perriman's looking up, there's no option through the middle of the ground. And when we talk about a funnel, this is what we mean. So there is an over-stacking, an over-reliance here, an over-commitment of numbers through the middle of the ground. So we're going to see Marshall Young, Marshall down here as well. And this is just forcing, it's essentially making sure that Perriman cannot go through the middle of the ground. So like a funnel, you are just directing Perriman here to only go to one place, to only be able to kick to one place on the field, to only be able to kick to one place on the ground. So when he looks up, he feels like there's only one option, long and high, and that is when you allow McInerney, it's when you allow Gardner, but most importantly, it's when you allow players like Harris Andrews to be able to get a really good, genuine run and jump at the football, and that is when Brisbane are at their best. Not only defensively, but also when they get their intercept mark game going, that is what kickstarts a lot of their ball movement, a lot of their transition comes off the back of their intercept marking and their ability to slow teams down. And it's not just off the back of slow ball movement. The Brisbane Lions frontal pressure can force these sort of kicks as well. And again, we're just talking about a funnel. So frontal pressure can create a funnel because it can feel like if you're the person with the football surrounded by pressure that you've only got one option, and that's long up the line, and that's exactly where Harris Andrews is going to be positioned a lot of the time. So with the Gold Coast game, this is what a lot of it was. As soon as the ball hit the deck, it was just a whole lot of ground pressure. It was a whole lot of collapsing pressure from the Brisbane Lions to just force these sort of dump kicks like we see here from Ethan Reid. He feels like he's got nowhere to go. That's because he doesn't have anywhere else to go. And if Brisbane can continually do this, if Brisbane can consistently do this, Harris Andrews is going to have a field day. And off the back of that, that is when we see the Brisbane Lions ball movement game at their best. So those are the three keys for me. If they can, one, get their ball movement from the back half game going through players like Dane Zorko, through players like Jasper Fletcher. If these players can start to get off the chain a little bit, if they can start getting handball receives, taking on kicks through the middle of the ground and actually hitting these targets, that is when we're going to be able to see the Brisbane forward line, at their best. That's when the Brisbane forwards are going to have genuine one-on-one opportunities in space, where the defensive 50 or their forward 50 isn't just clogged up by a lot of Geelong defenders. And then the second key is obviously all about the stars. This is what's going to happen if Brisbane can get their stars going. We saw what happened the last time they played Geelong when their stars really couldn't get near it. Cam Rayner had a couple goals gifted to him, but outside of that, didn't really do a whole lot. Zach Bailey had a big numbers game, but not a huge impact game. And Hugh McCluggage really couldn't get near the football that much. So if Brisbane are going to need these these star factor players to get involved in the game, to get their hands on the football. We saw Hugh McCluggage be able to do that last week and break the tag. We saw Cam Rayner, once he kicked that goal, that stoppage goal against Isaac Quainer, that's when he got himself involved in the game. So they need to get these guys involved in the game early. Cam Rayner can't go a half of football without touching the football like he did against Collingwood. That's not a game style that's going to be sufficient for a grand final against the best defensive team in the league in Geelong. It's not going to be a game style that's going to be able to win a premiership, because you are going to fall too far away on the scoreboard if your star players only show up for a half. So Cam Rayner's got to get on top. Hugh McCluggage has got to get on top. Zach Bailey's got to get himself involved in the game. And if they can do all of these things, I think they can win the flag. I'm not sure, but I think they can.